Alright. Hello everyone. So basically, I've been meaning to do a video like this for probably since about the month of July, but honestly, in many ways, I'm kind of glad I've delayed it till now because of a lot of things we do know. So, for those who aren't familiar with it, basically, Mass Effect remaster of the original trilogy has been rumored for, I think, since like the month of June, May, somewhere around there. And in more recent times, specifically with Jeff Grubb, who is a very well-known reporter for the gaming industry, he has said that he has confirmation from one of his sources within EA that in fact they will be releasing it, and that according to what he has said, that same source has also said that there will be a release date of about February for the project. However, the thing is that while Jeff Grubb is known for having some really good sources in the gaming industry, I actually have to say I'm kind of skeptical, we'll put it that way, of his source. And the reason being is because I've been wanting, and let me give a little background before I get into the reason why. So, I've played the original Mass Effect trilogy at least, I think 6 times I've gone through the entire trilogy, and about 4 out of those 6 are on Insanity mode, across all 3 titles. So, I would say I probably have somewhere in the realm of about 2,000 to 2,500 hours put into the game, plus an additional, I think, like 200 hours on Mass Effect Andromeda. So yeah, let's just say I'm a big fan of the franchise. So, I'm sure I'm not alone when I say this, but when Mass Effect Andromeda was kind of left open-ended, and basically the project got completely shelved back in 2017 when EA was going through some very big challenges with Anthem just basically taking over the marketing and everything, and Andromeda not doing as well as they wanted. That was around the time when I was kind of hoping maybe they would consider at some point down the road doing a remaster. Fast forward the clock to about 2019, and then I started to hear something from one of the YouTubers I used to watch when Mass Effect Andromeda was in development. And long story short, basically what happened was, when I was looking at this YouTuber, who, by the way, has asked me to keep his name anonymous because he doesn't even fully understand the scope of everything going on, basically he hinted that he went to a gaming conference, so 2019, I believe it was PAX East, or it might have been one of the ones that is shortly thereafter. And BioWare had set up a table where they were displaying mostly Anthem on their table, but then in a back corner of the table was some Mass Effect display, as well as some Dragon Age character models. And so he asked the staff that were manning that table, he said, hey, are any of you in any way, shape, or form involved in any of these projects that, you know, are on display right now? And one of them had said, yes, that is in fact the case. So, long story short, after what amounted to like several hours of conversation, basically the guy pretty much confirmed the fact that around that time, BioWare was in the process of creating another studio, because they had just bought a big building thanks to a huge budget uplift from EA. And that, according to this conversation, the reason why they were able to do it was because EA had realized after the failure of Anthem that they better get their act together, and they better darn well start releasing some good games, because if they don't, they're going to be in big trouble. So that was the reason why Jedi Fallen Order was released the way it was because it was kind of meant to be like a placeholder for most gamers, at least until they could get something out of BioWare. So to help turn things around, EA turned to BioWare and gave them an extra big budget and told them, okay, we're going to give you the green light to work on another Dragon Age. We're also going to give you the green light to do something in the Mass Effect universe as well. So after, my understanding is, after some very long talks, basically, they decided to go ahead and redo Dragon Age 4, basically. I'm not sure of all the details on that because he wasn't terribly forthcoming about that, but it's whatever. However, regarding the Mass Effect franchise, the plan was they would work on the trilogy first. And then after the trilogy was done, they're going to work on a new title that's going to take place in the Andromeda universe. I think it'll still use the main characters from the first title in that universe, but the key difference being that this time around the focus is going to be more on the story and less on the gameplay, because gameplay mechanics was, my understanding, the reason why a lot of the story fell apart, because they had put more focus into that, then they ran into crunch times, and and EA was getting really demanding at that time, and it just wasn't a good scenario. So, to bring it full circle back to the original topic. So, my understanding was, basically, that the go-ahead to do the Mass Effect remaster was not really given until 2018. However, Casey Hudson apparently had started putting things together back in 2017. So now fast forward the clock again to 2020, and everything is still pretty quiet for the most part until about June, I believe it was, of 2020. Now, I have the link to this original Reddit post, but the user unfortunately no longer uses their account on Reddit. So, take this with a grain of salt as you will. But what I would say is this. This should at least help you understand where exactly things are going with this remaster / remake they're working on, right? Because a lot of what this guy has said, like in the first part of his thing, has already happened. But as for Jeff Grubb's sources, some of it does match up with what's written here, but some of it really does not match up at all. So I don't know how much of that is them just changing their internal roadmaps, and how much of that is just them basically having to shift development cycles and all that jazz. So I don't know. We'll see what happens, and I apologize for rambling on, but let me get into the piece of information that dropped back in June that really sets the precedence for everything that we've at least kind of seen over the last 6 months, I would say. Alright, so this Reddit user, he says, for the Mass Effect remaster, here's what I know. Hopefully this brings some good news to everyone. I work for EA as a quality assurance tester. You should expect an announcement sometime after EA Play this year, as EA wants to show off brand new games at this year's event. Let me pause right there. Most people have said we haven't seen anything. However, going back to the YouTuber that wants to remain anonymous, he said that he thinks, he's not sure, but he thinks that during EA Play, like right at the very end of the showcase of the gameplay for the various games they have up and coming and have already announced, he could have sworn he said that he thinks that he saw what looks like new footage from the new Dragon Age, as well as the what may have been sort of like a pre-alpha footage of Mass Effect. So he's not sure, and he doesn't want to say anything with full confidence because, for all we know, maybe he misperceived it. Who knows? All right, so let's get back to what this particular quality assurance tester was saying. Expect Mass Effect Trilogy Remaster announcement and release date during N7 Day this year. I will break it down game by game. All 3 games have been ported into the Frostbite engine. BioWare has had a third party primarily working on this game with assistance from multiple EA Games studios, specifically Criterion, EA Gothenburg, formerly Ghost Games, Motive, and DICE. I am unsure of the official capacity and help from the previous studios, but I know all of them are helping in some shape. this remaster has been in the works since early 2017. BioWare didn't start full production of it until after Anthem launched. Parts of the Mass Effect Andromeda team, led by Mac Walters, are spearheading this remaster, with Casey Hudson also heavily involved. However, Casey Hudson is also busy helping with Anthem and Dragon Age 4. Alright, and on that note, I do want to make the point again that also a lot of the original devs and programmers that had also worked on the game came back either to actually do that work or are simply in an advisement role. So this is going to be a project of love if what this quality assurance tester is saying is going to turn out to be correct, and also if what Jeff Grubb's sources have said too. So let's hop into the first title in the original trilogy. Alright, so Mass Effect, major graphical and gameplay changes. Gameplay is more in line with Andromeda fluidity, but instead of the original weapon and armor systems in that game, it is more streamlined like the third title. However, this game has the least robust gameplay of the three in the remaster. The change in gameplay has also altered some of the level design and boss battles. Venezia is no longer in the room with the Ragni Queen, but is instead in a more open environment, and both the Saren's battles have had the same environments expanded to offer better options for gameplay. The planet exploration from Mass Effect 1 has been changed to be more in line with Mass Effect 3 and its planet scanning. However, there's still a few planets to land on. Do not expect Andromeda-size open worlds. I would say every planet combined is about equal to EOS in terms of size and areas to explore. This game is still a very linear experience. Galaxy map and galaxy exploration is Mass Effect 3 version, but with more to explore in this remaster. If I had to make a comparison, the game graphically looks similar to Dragon Age Inquisition. It's not a next-gen title, but Mass Effect remade in the current-gen Frostbite engine. And I want to pause right there. The Frostbite engine he's talking about is Frostbite 4, I believe, which is the one that was used on Battlefield Hardline as well as Battlefield 5. That is considered the current gen of the Frostbite engine, even back in June. However, my understanding from when I talk, and by the way, some of my other information I'm going to release too comes from another user on Reddit who provided me, let's say, enough evidence that I think he might be legit, but we'll see how things play out. So again, take it with a pinch of salt. But yeah, anyway, back to this. Character models look good, but look even better in the Mass Effect 2 and 3 versions of the remaster. Shepard's cabin has been added for Mass Effect 1. Companions are no longer stashed in the cargo hold. The sacrifice scene has new cutscenes added to show the fates of the squad members from their perspective. You are also able to start romances earlier, and if you are romancing the one who was not left behind, there is an added moment after with that particular love interest. I was told it was one of the few moments that Shepard is vulnerable. And I want to make a note on that. Yes, that is something that I have to admit from a character relation perspective that I myself personally have always been kind of desiring to see more of, is Shepard in a state of like more vulnerability, because like, yes, you have your Paragon and Renegade roots and they all have their different nuances and such, but this would be the first time that they would actually be sticking it in as solid places where it's like, yeah, no, we can actually show you that Shepard is just as human as anybody else was. Because while I liked him as a character, I sometimes felt like they did overdo him when it came to his image, you know, of being like this really, really strong guy, and it's like, no, he's just as human as the rest of us. But admittedly, like I said, even though there's only a few times where they actually show those kind of moments throughout the entire trilogy, I think this would be a good idea, so that way, again, it's a more relatable character overall. Alright, so back to more changes regarding Mass Effect 1. Bring Down the Sky and Pinnacle Station are included in the remaster as the base game and not DLC. Hub areas are more lively on the Citadel. There's more NPC interactions, ambient conversations, and the clubs, C-Sect, and certain areas of the Presidium are also completely redesigned to give it a fresh look and feel. Now, regarding those DLC they were talking about with Bring Down the Sky and Pinnacle Station, they were DLC upon release. However, I think if you had bought the game right around the time when Mass Effect 3 was released, the DLC automatically came with the game itself. I've already tried playing the game myself again on my new hardware, which is a Ryzen 9 3900X with a GTX 1080 Ti and a B550 motherboard. And let me put it this way, it can be done, but it's actually, I found it very challenging to set up. And the reason being because if you don't tweak certain graphical settings before you try to launch the game, then the game just will not run at all. And so it makes it really hard if you want to play through the entire trilogy to be able to do that. An example is that apparently the original engine they used for Mass Effect 1 has a frame cap of 60 FPS. Now, if you leave it on unlimited when you're trying to run the game, what will happen is that when the game allows itself to try to go above 60 FPS, it'll start glitching, or it'll start like blacking out or pixelating. And in some cases I've heard of people say having their game just crash completely. So you have to go in and set the frame limit of 60 FPS on there, because if you don't, then it just ruins it ruins your ability to be able to even start the game. So by having this ported over to a more modern engine, that is definitely going to make it much easier overall. So that's pretty much most of the original Mass Effect. So let's hop into Mass Effect 2. Mass Effect 2 will also have major graphical and gameplay changes like Mass Effect 1. Gameplay is more in line with Andromeda fluidity, but instead of the robust weapon and armor system in that game, it is more streamlined like Mass Effect 3. To be honest, I kind of enjoyed the armor and weapon system of Mass Effect 2. So I'm not sure how I feel about the fact that they will streamline it more like Mass Effect 3. Hopefully it'll turn out well. We'll see. Again, take it with a pinch of salt. Alright, character models are noticeably improved from the Mass Effect 1 remaster. Graphically, it is still on par with Dragon Age Inquisition overall. Planet scanning is back, but improved and more in line with Mass Effect 3 than the original ME2 game, which personally I enjoyed, to be honest, because the planet scanning that was done in the original game, which is you just pretty much hit the right click and boom, there you go. You don't even have to hover to find something. I didn't like that. I like searching things out, so I will definitely take that. They've also added more to the hub worlds instead of giving planets to explore. The Presidium and wards from Mass Effect 1 have been added with obvious environmental changes from the aftermath of Mass Effect 1. Parts of Omega that was cut from the base game has been added to the remaster. I actually am in favor of that myself, because whenever I went on Omega, I really felt like it was kind of a choked environment, which I know that was kind of on purpose because of what Omega is. But at the same time, I don't think it needed to be feeling that cramped, So having Omega feel more free and open, I think is going to be a good thing overall. Alright, so on to the next part. All of the DLC from the base game has been added into the remaster. Cut quests and content have been re-added. I also have been told that they have made the game more adult, as in certain romance scenes environments are no longer strategically non-nude. If you romanced Caden or Ashley from the first game, there is extra content with those characters later in the epilogue of the game. I'm actually curious to see what that's going to be myself, and the reason being is because, the only time you ever see any of them is when you're in the mission that I believe, if I recall correctly, it's the mission where you are essentially going after the collectors that are on I forget the name of the colony it was, but the collectors had gone after a particular colony, and so you're investigating to find out what they're up to and all that jazz. And pretty much after you go through a boss battle with the collectors, that's when, Caden or Ashley comes out and you have a brief dialogue with them, and that is the only time you ever see any of them. I personally wasn't a big fan of that because I felt like that didn't really give you enough content to sink your teeth into from a story perspective regarding, what they were really doing, and also this should fill in the gaps between ME2 and ME3. Because even there, when you jump into ME3, there are some things that are said that if you've played ME2, you understand the context of. But if you haven't, it kind of really doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm kind of hoping it fills in the information gap of what happened between, the time when Shepard defeats the Collectors and then turns himself into the Alliance, all the way up until the Reaper invasion of Earth in Mass Effect 3. So anyway, last point on Mass Effect 2, after you complete a rifle, which only activates after you beat the main quests, they have added the extra content of Shepard turning herself into the Alliance. Okay, yeah, I'm actually down for that. It is during this epilogue that you interact with Kate and Ashley briefly. Again, alluding to what's said previously. Alright, so that's pretty much for Mass Effect 2, so let's hop into Mass Effect 3. Like the previous two games, this one also includes major graphical and gameplay changes. Gameplay is more in line with Andromeda fluidity, but keeps the core ME3 inventory system. I will admit, from my perspective as a player of the game, I did like the Mass Effect 3 inventory system because it was very easy to learn, it was easy to upgrade, and the stats display of each of the items was also very clear and straightforward as to how it would affect your overall performance, or if it enhanced certain aspects of your character's role as maybe like an engineer, soldier, or whatever. So I did enjoy that part. So I'm kind of curious to see how exactly it gets implemented, but let's carry on to the next point. You get to play an extremely brief prologue as Admiral Anderson prior to the Reaper invasion. This allows players to see a little bit of Earth prior to its destruction, which was a major complaint from the original release. And I'm actually going to pause again right there. That is actually got a little bit of, let's just put it this way, it's got a kernel of truth. It really does. Because let me start with that first part. In the original Mass Effect 3, I do remember the only time you can play as Admiral Anderson is if, for some reason, when you get to the final mission and you're confronting the Elusive Man in what amounts to like one of the final scenes at the end of that mission. I do remember that you do get the option of being able to play Admiral Anderson, but there were certain events that had to take place prior to that in order for it to happen, which would ultimately lead to Shepard dying before Anderson, and Anderson being the one given the option to make all those decisions. So it'll be nice to finally play him in a role where he's a little bit more laid back and isn't like doing something that's game-changing. Get a more relaxed side of him. Now, I do have to agree that when I used to scour the forums, not just on BioWare, but even on a lot of the old clan forums for various websites, including Engine, I do remember that was the one thing a lot of people wanted to see was, hey, can we at least see some concept art at the very least of what Earth looked like before the Reapers came and wiped it all out. And I think this would be a good thing in many ways, at least from an aesthetics perspective. So talk about a little fan service. Alright, on to the next point. So Mass Effect 3 will look similar to Mass Effect 2 Remastered graphically. Character models might have some incremental improvements, but unless you view them side by side, it's going to be hard to tell. Planet and war asset system returns, but is easier to manage, and you cannot unlock asset quests until you reach certain points in the game. I mean, that's not really too different from the original, because in the original it was kind of the same thing, where there were side missions you could do that would actually improve your war assets. And basically, I had, in my original runs of Mass Effect 3, I had gotten so good at it after running through the entire trilogy a couple of times that I could actually get my war asset system up to like a 99% chance of being able to win over the Reapers. But that was because at that time I was kind of one of those ultimate completionists kind of deal when it came to this sort of thing. And I still am to some extent, because again, I like Mass Effect. Alright, so like the previous two games, they have added more to the hubs. All of the DLC from the base game has been added to the remaster and are considered main quests, so you can't miss them. Some cut content has also been included, about 5 hours worth. Also, something else that is new: if you play as female Shepard, you can also sleep with Aria after the Omega mission, as long as you're not currently in a relationship with anyone else. Apparently, Aria doesn't like that. Like the ME2 remaster, they have made the game more adult, as in certain romance scenes, environments are no longer strategically non-nude. I want to comment more on the time frame he's talking about there. About some of the cut content also being included, about 5 hours worth and such. So that's actually the one thing I have to admit I'm not going to complain about at all, because out of all three Mass Effects, right, the biggest thing that I had with the original Mass Effect was that sometimes it just felt way too long. I think by making the gameplay and mechanics more fluid, it's going to be much easier to keep pace with it, which will be nice. So even though that they're adding an additional like 2 to 3 hours of gameplay in there by taking some of the quests that were originally cut from it and putting it back in, you're still looking at around that 60-hour mark for the original Mass Effect if you're one who plays a little bit slower. I think on my fastest playthrough on the original Mass Effect, I couldn't get it below 48 hours, which is, it makes sense because of all the content they had packed into the first one. And then as for Mass Effect 2, I would have to say that one overall was the one that felt like the least slow, but it wasn't too fast either. It was really well balanced, in my opinion. So, it's nice that they're putting in a little extra content. I'm hoping that it doesn't add any more than 2 hours to it, so we'll see what happens. But as for this third one, the fact that they're adding an additional 5 to 6 hours, I'm kind of in agreement with that, because it was very easy to blow through if you knew what you were doing. I think on that game, the fastest playthrough I've had in that was about 28 hours. So we'll see. Anyway, so back to the final points. They have also added a bit more to the ending of the game. Any romance interest you have, assuming they are still alive, will be able to have a physical in-person goodbye with Shepard before the final mission, which, I might add, is not something that was the case with every single option out there. Some of them was only by video, and some of them you could do in person. So hopefully that changes all that. The ending has not changed in any capacity, however, some of the cut content is more towards the end of the game. So on that note, that was something that I wanted to ask this user originally, but then he just kind of stopped talking on his account, so I didn't get a chance to find out from him. But there was another Reddit user who wants to remain anonymous right now. When I talked to him, he had told me that some of that cut content it only possibly adds another option, because at the time I talked to him back in August, it was still up in the air, because from what I understand, a lot of the original team members, which includes some of the current management on the Mass Effect franchise, they wanted to keep the game ending the same. They didn't want to change it. However, a lot of the staff members they have working on it now, a lot of them were fans of the original Dragon Age and Mass Effect franchises, and that was the one thing they all agreed upon, was that they definitely needed to, if not change the ending, then at least give some more options. And my understanding is it was kind of in a little bit of a deadlock, in that there was based on some things he had said to me, it sounded like that deadlock probably wouldn't last long, and that the staff members would actually get their desire to at least put a small option in there that would potentially be a good ending. So we'll see what happens with that. And what's interesting is that when this Reddit user, Aspire to Be Good, posted this, someone in the comment section of this post even brought up the point and said, well, as detailed as this is, there's still a lot of information in here that makes me skeptical and such. And I loved his response. He said, that's good. You should have a skepticism about this, because, you know, if what I've said isn't true, then so be it. You know, it is what it is. But if what I have said is true, then you know you've gone to, you know, good information. And I have to agree with him on that one. So we'll see how much of this comes true and how much of this gets, you know, left behind. Now, with that being said, the reason why I'm making this video is because recently, on October 30th, around 3:04, we had a post put out by Mark Meer. Mark Meer was the voice for the male Commander Shepard. And basically, if we look here, here's what it says. I'll be joining my Mass Effect castmates. And then he starts listing all the different voice actors and actresses that were involved in the project, plus devs Karen Weeks and Patrick Weeks, okay, for a special N7-day event Saturday, November 7th at 11 a.m. Pacific Time. Stay tuned for the link. What's interesting is that about Karen and Patrick is that they were basically added at a much later time onto the Mass Effect franchise, if my memory serves correct. But I'm not going to look it up right now, just we'll see where things go. But what's interesting is this. The fact they're getting all the cast together, I find it very interesting. To me, that signifies that what this guy who had released the, we'll call it a rumor / leak, what that tells me is that there may in fact be a kernel of truth behind what he's saying. I don't expect everything to be 100%, because again, we'll see how this development cycle goes, but you know, all you can do is wait with bated breath. So we'll see how much they are able to really nail not only the original points, but also maybe hopefully divulge on the new points, and maybe actually give us some content that will just enhance the game more. But I'm still excited for this event, because it's nice to finally see all the remaining actors and actresses reuniting for a special event. The only thing though that I'm going to miss is the voice actor who did Zaid. Unfortunately, several years ago, he unfortunately succumbed, if I recall correctly, to cancer. So rest in peace, Zaid. But yeah, this is still going to be good. And anyway, I'm going to actually end the video here before I start rambling on. So with that, I hope you guys are looking forward to this and you enjoy your time if you do get a chance to catch it. I will probably do a follow-up video on it, if I can, once this event takes place, and we shall see what happens. So in the meantime, take care and peace.